Welcome to Yourself Yoga for Menopause, and to a very special guest today. I'm going to give her big introduction. Emily Barclay, who is the founder of Perimenopause Hub, the largest group in Facebook solely devoted to perimenopause. And Emily founded the hub in 2019, so like only 5 years ago. She was at the age of 39 when she felt totally frustrated with the lack of help and resources out there for women hitting perimenopause. Emily was actually training for Ironman triathlons. Yeah, just let that sink in for a minute, until she ended up a complete physical and mental mess. And it was only after 13 visits to doctors that she found her diagnosis, which was perimenopause. Now, since founding the hub 5 years ago, it has grown to almost 100,000 members. Just let that sink in for 1 minute. And Emily has a team of 55 experts from around the world, qualified in different areas, who are on hand to offer help and support to members. And I'm very privileged to be one of them. We fondly refer to Emily as the Peri Godmother. Yeah, she regularly organises events up and down the country and raising awareness about perimenopause. And she's also a familiar face in the media. She's also the brains behind a book entitled The Art to Zen of Perimenopause, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Emily, welcome.
Just grab my coffee there. I've got it to hand now. I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Julie.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for agreeing to this, because it's long overdue and you are the perfect person to share with viewers exactly what perimenopause is all about. More importantly, what to expect. So we're going to dive on in. I've got lots of questions. So first of all, how do you define perimenopause?
Right. This is the bit that I think catches a lot of people out, because I think we all think that menopause is the whole thing. And actually there are different stages. And I apologise, I talk with my hands a lot. So, so it's easiest to answer that question by starting with what menopause is.
Yep.
Menopause is defined by you having gone 12 months without a period.
Yep.
Assuming that you're still getting periods. I fully appreciate there are people for whom that doesn't count, but I'm talking about the majority here. So you've gone 12 months without a period, you have hit menopause.
Yes.
Thereafter, you are post-menopausal. The time leading up to that, when everything's changing, is perimenopause. So we kind of go through childhood, then we have puberty when everything changes and our periods start on one day. Then we go through this nice calm stage when, you know, people then sort of have babies and stuff to make sure that it's not really very calm.
Yes.
And then we enter this effectively reverse puberty of perimenopause leading up to our periods finally ending. And after that, we're in postmenopause for the rest of our lives.
Cool. So when should women expect perimenopause to start? This is a tricky one, isn't it?
Okay, this is
puberty kind of starts.
I'm going to give a little maths lesson. I think it's easiest to do a little maths lesson here. So the average age of menopause in the UK, I will add a caveat that this is an average of the white population, because medical stuff, they haven't bothered to take on board the fact that people of other ethnicities are different. So this is very much a somewhat whitewashed, but anyway, I won't get into the politics of that right now. The average age of hitting menopause, so that year without a period, is 51.
Okay.
Obviously, averages come about from having a range of numbers. So yes, the majority of women will hit it around age 51, but you might be 58 when your periods end. I really hope that's not me. You might be 45 when they end, but you're still part of that same average of coming out at 51.
Right.
Makes sense. Perimenopause can last for, on average, they say 4 years. I'm a little bit skeptical about that average, because I think a lot of people don't realise they're in perimenopause until they've been experiencing it for some years. So I think that average of 4 years is a little bit tricky to put too much weight on. But anyway, it can last 10 to 12 years. So if we've got our average age of hitting menopause at 51, and we've got this 10 to 12 years, late 30s is completely normal to start in perimenopause. However, here in the UK, the NICE guidelines, so the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, so the guidelines that are given to all the doctors, say that in women aged 45 and over, if they are displaying symptoms that are in line with being to do with the menopause transition, then go ahead, that's probably what it is, broadly. Right. Outside of that, unfortunately, that guidance gets sort of misinterpreted. So that guidance should mean if the woman in front of you is presenting with these symptoms and she's 45 plus, jobs are good and it's probably to do with menopause. Rule out a couple of vitamin deficiencies, but broadly we're good. It should not mean that even if she's 44 and 360 days old, it can't be. The wording is slightly ambiguous and has been interpreted to mean that if you are younger than 45, it can't possibly be anything to do with menopause, when actually, given that we've got, even if you are totally average and you are going to stop your periods at 51, that 10 to 12 years starts in your late 30s, early 40s.
Wow.
I mean, it's just basic maths. Unfortunately, a lot of people are being dismissed because this guidance suggests that these symptoms shouldn't even exist in people younger than 45, when actually all it's saying is if she's presenting with this and is 45 plus, run with it. You don't need to dig into anything else. Younger than that, do dig around, make sure nothing else is going on. Yeah. But it's so it can late 30s and not unusual.
Yeah, that is an eye-opener for me. I've never done the maths like that. And I expect for a lot of people watching this. And by the way, if you have any questions, leave a comment and either myself or Emily will respond. So because I thought like late 30s was an early perimenopause, because that's bandied around a lot now. So if an average could be, or if it's not unusual to start perimenopause late 30s, what would be an early perimenopause?
So this is the tricky bit. An early menopause is when you've hit menopause before 40.
Right.
The perimenopause part doesn't really come into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So just like with puberty, and I think relating it to puberty is sometimes the easiest way to say it. We all know that girls from, let's say, 10-ish onwards are going to start seeing changes in their body. Their periods may not start until they're 15. Yeah. But they're still completely within that range. If, however, their periods start at 7, that's early.
Right, yeah.
And if their periods don't start until, say, 20, that's late. And we've got a similar sort of margin of error with perimenopause and menopause. So if you've reached menopause before, I think the magic number is 40, then yes, absolutely, that is an early menopause. But if you start getting perimenopause symptoms in your late 30s, that is probably fairly normal.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So one of the most commonly asked questions on Google is, how do you tell when you're in perimenopause? Right? So how does a woman know that she's officially perimenopausal?
Okay, so there is a long list of potential symptoms, and a lot of those symptoms overlap with other things like thyroid issues, like low vitamin D, low iron. So there's quite a lot of things that we would always want to rule out before being certain that we're definitely talking about perimenopause, regardless of age. So even if somebody's sort of 49 or 50, I would hope that the doctor would run bloods just to rule out thyroid issues, and vitamin and mineral deficiencies.
Okay.
Right, once we've ruled out stuff and we're still left with this chunk of symptoms, I encourage people to track those symptoms. Track them against your cycle. If you aren't on a birth control, that means you don't have a period, because I know that becomes difficult. Track them, whatever. Just track them. If they are hormonal, those symptoms will follow a cyclical pattern.
Yeah.
If they aren't hormonal, they are more likely to be fairly constant. So when I talk about tracking, I'm encouraging people to track every day. So pick the sort of top 5, 6, 10, whatever doesn't overwhelm you, number of symptoms that are really impacting your life, and track every day. That includes on the good days.
Okay.
So let's say the symptoms are anxiety, fatigue, and I can't think of another one. My
brain fog, joint pain.
So yeah, let's say let's just target those 3 for now. If you are feeling exhausted all of the time, it may be something else. If you are experiencing anxiety all of the time, it may well be something else. If you are experiencing brain fog all of the time, it may well be something else. So in tracking, you start to see whether there is this cyclical aspect to it. So I would expect in most people, once they're tracking, that they will see the worst of their symptoms in the run up to their period. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you've got the Mirena coil and you're not having a period, your body's still giving you clues as to when that period would come, if you just tune in and listen to what those cues are. So the data is coming from your body all the time. It's just a question of capturing that data and interpreting it. Now, I'm not suggesting that every woman who has been tracking then goes back and interprets her data. What I am saying is get that data, and then when you go to see a doctor or a practitioner or a nutritionist or whoever you want to go and see, they can interpret that.
Yeah, because it's so easy to forget, obviously, brain fog, but it's so easy to forget, we're so busy, we forget what went on the month before. So either
and this is why I think tracking every single day, because it also, we all have a tendency, this is just, human nature, we all have a tendency to, once things are a bit bad, we focus on the fact that it's constantly bad. Everything's bad. There we are. The world is terrible. And actually, by virtue of tracking, you start to see that there are good days as well. You start to see that there may actually only be a handful of days per cycle that you feel really pretty crap. But because those days have been so horrible, they've become bigger than they are. Yeah. So tracking can be, it's a win-win. On the one hand, it gives you loads of data that you can take to whatever practitioner you choose to work with, and they can interpret it. You are already effectively giving them the stuff that they're going to need to ask you in that first consult. So you've cut your expense or your time significantly by having done this, but also you start to see that actually it isn't all bad. Also, you start to be able to spot the little things. Like, for example, talking about myself here, if you experience the rage, maybe 2 to 3 days out from your period, once you've identified that pattern is there, you can start to identify that the rage is coming.
You don't go on the road?
And you can temper or not your actions depending on who you want to remain friends or whatever with, and who you want to let rip at.
Yourself in a dark room.
But you can use it to your advantage because you're aware of it, because forewarned is always forearmed, isn't it? So
definitely.
If you start to identify that you feel particularly full of beans 3 days after your period ends, just around ovulation, harness it. Use it. That's a moment of superpower. Book in those work things that need to happen when you're full of beans. do it. If you notice, all of these things, tracking gives you so much data. And
so do you recommend a particular tracking method, an app, or
whatever
anything?
works best for each individual?
Right.
Some people like pen and paper. Some people like to use an app. Some people use their diary. Some people use a printout on the fridge and just sort of scribble a face on it, you know, a smiley face, a sad face, whatever on it.
Yeah.
Whatever works best for you. I personally use an app because that's how I like to do stuff like that. But I totally understand that there's a large quantity of people out there who don't want to use an app for data sensitivity reasons and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not sharing anything particularly useful to anybody else in my app. So if it gets hijacked, it's frankly, I mean, lucky old hijacker, they're going to know when my period is due. I mean, that's not really helping anybody except for me. But I completely understand that some people have a wariness around data being in the cloud and stuff like that. So I totally get that. So whatever it is that works best for you, if that is literally getting a notebook and doing a Sunday to Saturday dates and just having whatever symbols work best for you. If you want to have lots of different colourful pens, big fan of colourful pens, and have different colourful pens that mean good or bad, or different colourful pens for different symptoms, whatever it is, however works best for you. And I realise that's not helping. I mean, there are lots of apps, but apps aren't for everybody. So it's finding that way that means that you will track.
So let's look at the symptoms. How many officially are there now? There were 34. Has that changed?
It depends where you look.
Oh.
Some sources say 34, some say 40. Right. I've seen some that say 66.
What?
I know.
Okay.
And yeah, so I mean, okay, so the ones that we know are there are.
I was going to say, what's the most common? Say 5 of the most common.
The most common, I would say, are anxiety, which happens often when our progesterone starts to decline before our estrogen. So it can be quite an early perimenopause sign, because just to backtrack, to progesterone kind of does this fairly linear decline, and estrogen does all sorts of stuff. And our bodies rely on those two hormones keeping each other in check. It basically relies on progesterone keeping estrogen in check. So as the progesterone drops off, but the estrogen hasn't yet dropped off, the difference between them can be problematic for some people. And that's where things like the earlier symptoms, such as anxiety, fatigue, insomnia, can come from.
That's interesting.
Whereas the classic hot flushes tend to be a sign of your estrogen being pretty much bottomed out. Yeah. So a lot of women, as they go through perimenopause, won't experience hot flushes. They might get night sweats, slightly different, but they won't necessarily experience hot flushes until they're really very nearly at the point of their periods ending.
Right. So, but I've seen, because I think most women watching this are familiar with the main ones. But there are a lot of kind of really strange ones coming to light, like dry mouth and itchy eyes. And can you tell us some of those? Because I look back now, I listen and I think, oh my goodness, I may have had that. Yeah, but didn't know at the time.
In very simple terms, estrogen is a lubricant.
Right.
So as our estrogen declines, it stands to reason that not only might we experience vaginal dryness, which is a really big one, but people don't talk about it because, oh my goodness, we can't talk about vaginas, but also dry eye, dry mouth, burning mouth syndrome, kind of along the same lines. People report itchy ears, again, because it's dry.
Oh, yeah.
Painful joints because there's less synovial fluid in the joint because of the estrogen. It's frankly crazy how many estrogen receptors we have. Equally dry skin because your estrogen has been keeping your skin more moist, more plump. So yeah, any of the sort of dry symptoms, as it were.
Yeah, like nails, brittle nails.
Hair,
changes, doesn't it?
hair changing, all of those things. Literally, estrogen has been a lubricant until now, and then it's not there.
Wow. So it's like a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
Which would you say, I mean, no one wants any of these symptoms. Which would you say, which would you say is the one that causes the most distress?
Anxiety.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that's the one that limits people's lives the most.
Yeah.
Because suddenly people who've been perfectly comfortable doing all sorts of things feel like that they can't.
Yeah.
They can't maybe drive or go and get the train or go and meet friends, and it suddenly curtails their life so hugely that I really do. I think anxiety is the most unpleasant. I know people would say, "Oh, you know, hot flushes are pretty uncomfortable." It's like, yeah, but you're just hot for a bit. I say you're just, you know, they're horrible. I'm aware of that, but I think that anxiety thing. I think any of the psychological symptoms are the ones that are harder to manage because they can seem to come from out of nowhere.
Yeah. And they can impact on your job and your relationships. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, a single symptom can impact your confidence, your looks, like everything, can't it? So if you were to divide let's stick with the 34 and you were to divide them up, which do you think is most impacted? Our physical well-being, mental well-being, or emotional? Or is it equal?
It's different for each person.
Yeah.
And at different stages throughout. So as the progesterone declines and then estrogen is sort of doing a roller coaster. Yeah. You know, some people will have, as I say, the crippling anxiety or low mood or depression, or, you know, some poor women get to the point of having suicidal ideation. I mean, it's horrific how bad the psychological symptoms can get. I think the physical symptoms are, I'm not going to say easier to manage because they're not, but I think when something is manifesting physically, I think we tend to get taken more seriously. It tends to be more tangible, easier to discuss to the doctor or to our partner or to our colleagues or whatever. When it's the psychological symptoms, it's very, very difficult to communicate about them. So not only are you suffering with them, but you're also not really sure how to ask for help because you don't know what help you need.
Yeah, I think we understand the physical ones more as well. So, okay, let's move on to, one last question. Do they end when menopause starts? So we have this day of arrival, right, where we've not had a period for 12 months. So officially we are in menopause. What happens to all those symptoms?
For most women, they start to peter out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that overnight, once you've gone those 12 months, that magically everything stops, because that's not how it is at all. Yeah. But in most women, as the hormones kind of stable out, albeit much lower than they were previously, that stability brings with it a new normal. Yeah. So just as before we went into puberty and at the end of puberty, we're not exactly the same. You know, our body shape is different when we're 10 to when we're 18. So many things about us are different from when we're 10 to when we're 18. Equally, from when we're, let's say, 40 to 55, we will change. We will change in many ways. I mean, I'm just giving brackets there, but, you know, we will change. Our body shape will change. Our skin will change. Our muscle mass will change. Lots of things do change. That isn't to say that we lose all quality of life. It's just merely that we've gone through a second transitional period, and we are slightly different at the end.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, so treating perimenopause. What steps do you encourage women to take? And I know you've already said really push the tracking. Yeah. So what other steps can they take?
This is a really, really big question, so I'm going to keep it really simple. There are a bazillion of options out there, depending on how people like to manage their health. So if you are somebody who likes to go to the doctor, get prescribed some medication, you can go and get HRT.
Yes.
If you are somebody who does not like to do that, you can try herbal medicine, homeopathy, nutritional changes, supplements, yoga, obviously. And that's just about the sort of the headline symptoms. When you then dig a bit deeper into looking at what is bringing about those symptoms, yes, there's the hormonal decline, obviously. That's easy to talk about. And that's where HRT jumps in and just goes, hurrah, have some more hormones. Brilliant. You'd think we're done. Unfortunately, things like stress, processed foods, too much sugar, stimulants, and so on and so forth, also have an impact on our hormones. So it's quite a big jigsaw.
Yes.
And it's up to each woman as to how she chooses to manage that. So I think there's a perception at large that it's HRT or something else. Mm-hmm. And that somehow once you've got HRT, it's going to be this magic bullet and everything's sorted. No. HRT is just part of the jigsaw. But if you find in your tracking that, whenever you eat sugar, let's say, that it sets you off, well, maybe you need to be looking at reducing sugar or accepting that when you eat sugar, you get symptoms. We're each in control of our own bodies. We all have a choice to make as to, do I want to do the thing that I know will make me feel bad afterwards, but I know I'll enjoy it at the time, which might be having a glass of wine. It might be eating some chocolate. You might have ascertained that that's not going to make you feel good longer term.
Yeah.
But you might want to do it because you know that the joy you will get from eating that thing or going to that event or doing all those things will outweigh the side effects, as it were. And so it's really personal. But also there's then this whole kind of, a lot of people by the time they get to sort of their 40s, their 50s, they've experienced all sorts of past stuff. And that can all come back to bite us as well, because we've pushed it down into boxes. And then as our hormones get unstable, we can't push it down as much. So not only is there kind of the medical side of things, however you choose to manage that, whether you choose to balance your hormones with food, with naturopathic medicine, can't even speak, whatever. But if there's past trauma there, you may find that you need to resolve that as well. So it kind of ultimately comes down to, what do you need?
Yeah.
What is going to genuinely help you right now? And I mean, I feel as though I talk endlessly about self-care, and I know self-care has got kind of Instagramified and looks like spa days, and I don't mean that at all. I merely mean, is my body thirsty? Self-care is having some water. Is my body tired? Self-care is having a rest. Am I feeling just hectic and overwhelmed by things? Self-care is maybe going and sitting with a book. Self-care can look like a lot of things, but a lot of us experience maybe worse symptoms because we may have spent much of our 20s and 30s and early 40s not caring for ourselves particularly.
I was going to say, what you do in your 20s and 30s, you realise impacts on your perimenopause and your ability to cope with it, I think. But equally, it's not too late if you can start doing things in perimenopause. Not only does it help you in that stage, but it helps you in later years, post-menopause, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, I'm not for a second saying that 20-year-olds need to go and totally overhaul their lifestyles, because I would, if someone had told me that in my 20s, I wouldn't have listened. Not a chance I'd have listened.
No, maybe not. No, if you knew it was coming anyway, you just go out and enjoy yourself.
But be being mindful of the fact that stress and things like that can have such a huge impact. Yeah. I'm not for a second saying that people should just get rid of stress in their lives, because obviously we can't do that.
Not easy.
But how you manage stress, how you give yourself space to decompress, how you choose, because this is a choice, how we choose to respond to these things, that is self-care.
Yeah, it is, for sure. I also think, like when women are preparing to have a baby and they write a birth plan of how they'd like it to be, half the time it goes out the window because, they can't handle it, or there was a last minute complication. And I think with perimenopause as well, it's about releasing expectations so that you are more open, or, an open mind to what may help you, that you may, like for me, like with yoga, God, I could have done it years ago. Didn't start until I was 53 because I was so close-minded. I think keeping an open mind and be prepared to adapt.
Absolutely. And the symptoms are going to change as you go through it. So it isn't that if on day one you start with anxiety, you will experience anxiety only. The anxiety may sort of tail off at some point, but then other symptoms may come up as the hormone levels have a different balance between themselves. So being adaptable and being just open to going, okay, and this is, again, we're tracking. I know I always bring it back to tracking. Can really help, because then you're asking your body what it's telling you, and you can make changes accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can see patterns. It's all there, isn't it? If you can't see it, someone else might be able to see it. So just one last question on treating perimenopause. It doesn't need to be confirmed by a doctor, does it? Yeah, people don't have to go get like some official diagnosis on the records or anything.
No, it's not officially a diagnosis. It's not, because it's not an illness. It's a life stage. No. But it's, so you don't need a diagnosis. If you are just like puberty, and I keep referring back to puberty, but, we don't all go to the doctor at age 11 and go, oh God, am I in puberty?
Yeah.
We know that we are. The same goes, we know menopause is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the run up to it can be a fairly bumpy ride.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you are wanting to go down the HRT route, you don't need to go to your doctor at all if you choose not to.
Brilliant. Okay, let's talk about the hub before we wrap up. How does the hub help? How can it help someone who isn't a member, who's watching this and has never heard of the Perimenopause Hub?
It's what I needed 5 years ago. So I got back from the doctor's appointment where finally the word perimenopause was given to me, and I thought, okay, brilliant, I've got a word finally. This is good. I'm not dead or anything, because frankly 3.5 years of not knowing what on earth was going on, I was like, it could be anything, frankly. I came home and wanted to find a support group and wanted to find advice on how to manage my symptoms, and I couldn't find that. And I created it because I didn't want anybody else to feel as alone and as lost as I did. So anybody watching this who is going, this sounds a bit like me, come and join us. Mm-hmm. If it's not for you, it's not for you. That's absolutely fine. But come and join the Facebook group. There's no, you're not tied into anything. You don't have to stay if you don't think we're right for you. But you might just find that in scrolling through the posts, you realise that you're not alone and that actually other people are going through the same thing as you. And that is so powerful.
It is. It's priceless. Yeah, really
and
is.
Added to that, we then also have the panel of experts, as you said at the start, Julie. And so if you've turned up, you've found from the peer support that like, oh my God, this is okay, I'm not absolutely losing the plot, you can then also check in to see what the experts are offering so that you can find the ways to manage it that work for you. You might, an individual might be really concerned that they're losing muscle mass and they know they've got a family history of osteoporosis. Well, they're going to be wanting to look up a completely different set of experts to somebody who has a family history of breast cancer but would like to access HRT if that's at all possible. It's just totally different things. There might be somebody for whom their relationship has kind of erupted because at this life stage, a lot of us find that we don't tolerate quite the same levels of bullshit as we did previously, and that can be damaging to relationships. Well, again, that person's going to need something different to the person who needs strength training or the person who needs a specific menopause doctor.
When they're in the hub, do they use a little search button to search for a symptom? When you say they can look up an expert, how do they? So they're in the hub and there's lots going on because it's a busy group. How do they find what they want? How easy is it?
So there's the little magnifying glass search thing. So if they search for a symptom, they will find posts that previous people have put up about that.
Yeah.
Or just pop in a post saying, I don't know if this is what's going on, but these are the things that are happening. If there's an expert that specifically fits the whatever they're talking about, then we'll try and tag them so that the expert can see it. And the experts pop in all the time as well, and we'll look and see the posts that are relevant to how they can help. So I'm going back to anxiety again. That seems to be my my thing today. But let's say you have been really struggling with anxiety, and finally you come and join the group and you see that other people are also talking about anxiety, so suddenly you feel a lot less alone. Well, further to that, a couple of the experts who can help you manage anxiety will probably hop on as well and say, hi, here's a download, or come and join this group and we can work through this together. So it's a very sort of supportive and helpful environment.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of the experts are self-employed people that if anybody wants to work with them, the experts charge what they charge. But all the experts have huge amounts of free resources as well, so that people can kind of dip their toe in and see if that's the right fit for them. And then if it is, then potentially sign up to the next thing. If it's not, fine. Nobody has lost out by that. So there's lots and lots of ways of working with the experts, whether it's in a paid capacity or by joining their Facebook groups or by downloading their freebies or whatever. So I don't think anybody should feel that there's anything that's going to restrict them accessing the experts. They just may not be able to access the full gamut if financially they're not able to,
Oh God, there's so much help and advice there. It's incredible. Which brings me on to tell me about the book. Why did you do this? I mean, it's amazing. Look at the size of it. It's incredible.
I know, it's a bit of a toy.
An essential guide to navigating perimenopause your way, right? And it gives a little bit about you, and then we have literally how many chapters?
48.
48 chapters. And we've got from exercise through to HRT, kindful communication, orgasms, blood pressure, toxic positivity, incredible range of not what you would normally expect, some of it. Why did you do that? It's amazing. It's
twofold really, as everything that I do is twofold. I wanted to showcase what the experts do, and I wanted to help women to find the information. And a book seemed like a good idea. Just as an aside, if anybody watching this is thinking, oh, what I'm going to do is get 40 experts together and pull together a 48 chapter book, and I'm going to give myself 4 months to do it. Don't. No. It's too short, and it's a ridiculous thing to do on your own. If you're ever going to do that, if anybody is thinking of doing that, get somebody on board to proofread or edit or typeset. Don't do it all yourself.
No.
Speaking from experience. Anyway, I'm immensely proud of it because it is a dip in and out book that whatever it is that you need help with right now, you dip in and you find that chapter. So whilst, yes, it's quite a hefty tome, it's not a book that people should feel daunted by, because there is no expectation that you'd sit down and read it from start to finish. So the expectation is that you'd go, right, today I'm really feeling like burnout is just killing me. Okay, so you go to page 39, you read the burnout chapter. It's about 1,500 words, so you can read it in really not very long.
Yeah.
And then there's a QR code for you to get more information from that expert should you wish to. So each chapter is written by the expert in that area. Mm-hmm. There's a QR code at the end of each chapter to find out more about that expert. And each chapter, and I felt this was really important, I don't know why I fixated on this, but I did. Each chapter is in the English that expert uses. So I haven't British Englished the American English, right, and vice versa. So each chapter is in the English of that expert.
Should have had mine in Yorkshire, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I don't know if I could proofread Yorkshire, but
no. And Emily saved the best for last because I'm next to the last chapter on page 458. Just saying, yeah. Yoga, the natural solution for perimenopause. Emily, we could talk for ages. Thank you for sharing all this amazing information, because I know someone watching, even if they think they know it, I'm learning from you and I know a lot about it. I'm sure they're going to take home a nugget of information that might just change something for them. So thank you so much. And by the way, viewers, if you do stumble across a nugget when you're watching this, please let us know. And likewise, if you have any questions, comment below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Emily, I think we have to do a follow-up. There's lots more we need to discuss. Thank you so much, and for sharing your time with us and your expertise, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.